was an actress, and I went into acting because I wanted to tell stories that I thought were worth telling. And I did that to a certain extent as an actress, but there was lots about it that I didn't like. And when I stumbled across celebrancy work, I kind of thought I would just take it on as, you know, something to do when I wasn't so busy with acting, but actually it ticked all the boxes of why I'd wanted to go into acting in the first place, in terms of telling stories that are worth telling and expressing, you know, the real sense of what it is to be human and dealing with emotion, and it just felt very, very, very profound. It's a very particular person who's attracted to this kind of work. It takes somebody who likes people. It takes somebody who's a good writer, somebody who's a good listener, and somebody who's able to articulate feelings, I would say. Somebody who loves literature, and somebody who's thought kind of deeply, you know, in their own life about what birth and death and marriage mean to them. For the weddings and for the funeral training, it generally takes place over about a 3-month period, although that can be longer because there's lots of observation that goes on before, during and after the training. So the training itself would finish after about a 3-month period, but then the celebrant needs to, or the trainee, the provisional celebrant needs to have done a certain amount of ceremonies until they're finally observed and kind of fully accredited. It's such an important moment in life. These rites of passage are so significant. People want to get it right, and they want it to be a truthful and an honest and loving experience, and generally that's what a humanist ceremony is. Take a wedding, for instance. Often you'll find culturally that couples will marry, although they have no religion, they will marry in a church because that's what's expected of them. That's because it's what their parents did, it was what their grandparents did, and they feel that kind of pressure to do the same thing. But when it actually comes to the ceremony, there's a sense of the words don't speak to them. It has no significance to them because they don't believe in the content. So there's a sense of kind of crossing their fingers behind their back, not really kind of engaging, which, you know, for me and for all celebrants, I think is such a shame, because these moments are moments when you should be being your most honest. You don't have to be a humanist to have a humanist ceremony. In fact, the majority of families who come to us for a humanist ceremony may well have not even have heard of humanism at all. This might be their first introduction into what humanist is. And there isn't any kind of written history that I'm aware of. My understanding is that it came about very organically. So there's no one person who's responsible for having had this great idea and then everyone jumped on board. My understanding is that, you know, even in the early 1900s, there were people who just knew that this was a need that people had that wasn't being met. So the need for non-religious rites of passage, non-religious funerals, marriages, naming ceremonies. And they just took it upon themselves to go out and start providing that service. And then it grew from just being a handful of people into being 10, 20, 30 people. And the interesting thing is there was no training at that time. So literally it was people just meeting up, even up to about 25, 30 years ago, it was people meeting up in houses and chatting about how you should do it and sharing texts, and then just going out and delivering these amazing services. Obviously, I don't believe, and humanists don't believe in an afterlife, but what we do believe is that you live on in the hearts and minds and the actions of people who you touched and who you loved. So, I mean, yeah, that's death is the end of life. It's a full stop. So within a humanist funeral, there's no reference. Generally, there is no reference to God. It's a difficult question, and we're recognising the need to be flexible because we're living in a culture that is moving away from religious belief, but at the same time there is, you know, it's a process. Because we're not focusing on recommending the spirit or the soul to Christ, we're focusing on the person and what they contributed in life, the family connections, the relationships, and how those things live on, those memories live on, those inspirations live on. So a half-hour service will include music at the beginning, which is chosen by the family. and then words of welcome from the celebrant, who will also briefly explain that it's a non-religious ceremony, but there's time for silent reflection, so it's an inclusive ceremony. And then we go on to the eulogy, which is generally the largest part of the ceremony, and that can be an opportunity for as many family members and friends to get up and speak as we have time for, and that'll be made up of funny stories or thoughtful stories, poems, can be live music, that just so a real kind of picture of the person who's died. And then after that tribute section, we generally go to some time of silence, which, as I've already said, is time for people of whatever faith to do what they feel is right, to just kind of to be with the person. And then after that, we have the committal, which is when you lose sight of the coffin. And then some closing words, kind of looking forward, looking back into stepping into life again, but carrying this person in your heart. And a final piece of music, again, which the family have chosen to exit to.